The Galactic Defense Academy's simulation chamber hummed with anticipation as Cadet Aliana Chen stepped onto the holographic battlefield. Around her, the other cadets Viraxians with their crystalline exoskeletons, Kelthari with their six-armed precision, and Zephyrite whose minds processed tactics at quantum speeds watched with barely concealed amusement. A human hissed, Commander Vexter, the Viraxian instructor. In advanced tactical warfare, Aliana ignored the whispers. She'd heard them all before. Humans were the younger species in the Galactic Coalition, barely 2 centuries since first contact. They were considered adequate pilots, decent engineers, but warfare, that required millions of years of evolutionary refinement. Your objective, Vexter announced, is to break through the Krathi defensive line and secure the orbital platform. You have 30 minutes. The Krathi AI will adapt to your every move. He paused, mandibles clicking with what might have been laughter. The previous cadet lasted 4 minutes. That previous cadet had been James Rodriguez, Aliana's training partner and the only other human in their cohort. He stood at the observation deck, arms crossed, a knowing smile on his face. The simulation began. The Krathi fortress materialized before her 12 defensive turrets, overlapping shields, and swarms of automated fighters. The optimal strategy, as taught by the Academy, involved a coordinated assault, disable the shield generators simultaneously, create a breach, and push through with overwhelming force. Aliana looked at her loadout: 1 light fighter, 2 plasma cannons, and a dozen standard missiles. By galactic standards, it was pitiful. She grinned. Cadet Chen, why haven't you engaged? Vexter's voice crackled through her calculating. She replied simply. What the galactic species never understood about humans was that they hadn't evolved on a world with one apex predator. Earth had dozens. Humans weren't the strongest or fastest. They were the ones who survived by being unpredictable, by turning disadvantages into weapons, by refusing to accept that the game couldn't be changed. Aliana fired her missiles not at the fortress, but at the asteroid field surrounding it. She's wasting ammunition. Someone gasped in the observation deck. The missiles impacted, fracturing the asteroids into thousands of fragments. Then Aliana did something no galactic tactician would consider. She flew directly into the debris field she'd created, using her fighter's engines to push the fragments ahead of her like a shield. The Krathi turrets fired, but their sensors couldn't lock onto her ship through the chaotic debris. Their own protocols prevented them from wasting ammunition on rocks. Impossible, Vexter muttered. The AI should adapt, but Aliana was already through the outer perimeter. She dove toward the fortress at an angle the Krathi considered irrational to steep, too fast, certain to result in a crash. At the last moment, she cut her engines and let momentum carry her, spinning her fighter to bring the plasma cannons to bear. She didn't aim for the shield generators, she aimed for the fortress's waste heat vents. Every structure in the galaxy had them to expel the enormous heat generated by shields and weapons. They were never targeted because they were too small, too heavily armored, and hitting them accomplished nothing, unless you understood thermodynamics, the way a species that had mastered combustion engines for centuries did. Aliana's plasma bolts, superheated to temperatures that made Viraxian instructors uncomfortable, poured into the vents. The heat had nowhere to go. The fortress's own cooling systems became its enemy, distributing the energy throughout its infrastructure. In the observation deck, James started laughing. The Krathi shields flickered. Their power grid, overwhelmed by thermal stress, began rerouting energy to cooling systems. Turrets went offline. In their algorithmic perfection, the Krathi AI followed its programming. Protect the core systems at all costs. That's when Aliana struck the shield generators. They exploded in cascading failures, and suddenly the impregnable fortress was naked before her. She flew through the breach, planted a remote charge on the orbital platform's docking collar, and was back outside before the Krathi AI even registered the intrusion. 17 minutes, 42 seconds. The simulation ended. Silence filled the observation deck. That was... Vexter struggled for words. That was not standard doctrine. No sir, Aliana said, stepping out of the simulator. It was human doctrine. There is no human warfare doctrine, a Kelthari cadet objected. Your species barely survived its own planetary conflicts. James stepped forward, still grinning. That's exactly the point. We didn't survive because we were stronger. We survived because we learned that rules are just patterns waiting to be broken. The galaxy has been at war for millions of years, another cadet said. Your tactics are crude, unrefined and effective, Vexter interrupted, his voice heavy with something that might have been respect. Cadet Chen, explain your reasoning. Aliana met the instructor's compound eyes steadily. Every species in this academy evolved as the dominant force on their world. You learned warfare as a game of strength versus strength. Humans, we were prey before we were predators. We learned to think like both. We learned that the strongest fortress has a weakness, that every advantage can be turned into a liability, that chaos is just another tool. She glanced at James, who nodded encouragingly. You mock us for being young, for being new to the stars. But that's our greatest weapon. We haven't learned what's impossible yet. Vexter's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. The Krathi Dominion has been pushing into coalition space for a decade. Our simulations give them an 87% probability of victory within 5 years. Our best strategists have found no solution that doesn't cost billions of lives. He turned to face all the cadets. Perhaps we've been asking the wrong species. In the months that followed, Aliana and James were reassigned to the Coalition Strategic Command. The other species watched with skepticism as these two young humans pored over battle plans that had stumped galactic military minds for years. But skepticism turned to shock when the humans presented their doctrine: asymmetric warfare, psychological operations, logistical disruption, concepts the galaxy had forgotten or never known. When the Krathi Dominion launched their invasion, they encountered something they'd never faced in their thousand-year military history: an enemy that didn't fight fair, that turned their own strengths against them, that refused to follow the patterns they predicted. They encountered humans, and the galaxy learned that sometimes the most dangerous species isn't the one that's been fighting the longest, it's the one that's been fighting to survive.